There's Lauren from McLaren, the PR lady, doing her work, getting everybody ready. And that is a Mika Hakkinen car from 1999. Mika taking the championship, and the all-mobile Mercedes colours.
How terrific is that?
I know, yeah. I remember Mika driving that car and Ian Coulthard putting it through its paces. But for the aficionados out there, let me just tell you who wear what, as it were. We have an M7C01, Rob Garrett, the European Le Mans driver. Stick around, Igor. We're going to watch these guys go. I keep waiting for your cars to come around, but they haven't come around yet. But stick around if you feel like it, and you can enjoy this with me, because Tony Kanaan is at the wheel of a M2305. As he mentioned, his hero, Ayrton Senna and Alain Prost, teammates at the time. Poor old Ron Dennis pulling his hair out trying to keep those two together. Then David Malukas in that M2602. James Hunt from 1977. And talking about pulling your hair out, that would have been hard controlling him too. Hunt the Shunt, as he was known. And it was interesting talking about that particular car to Alexander Rossi yesterday, because I said, well, you know, great, you're driving a James Hunt car, that's cool. And he said, yeah, it's the only one I could fit in. Because he's really tall, he's over 6 foot, is Alexander Rossi. And, you know, people like he, Gerhard Berger, who also drove for McLaren, and, you know, tall drivers. Justin Wilson was another one. I mentioned Gerhard. But Prost and Senna were little guys, you know, and so, yeah, poor old Alexander Rossi struggling, and James Hunt was a rarity. Mika, not that tall, but tall enough.
Ron Dennis had his hands full, didn't he?
Oh, good God. You know, he must be sitting, I'm sure he's sitting in his rocket jet going, what on earth did I get myself into? But to be honest, he started at McLaren as a mechanic, and to say he took it to dizzy heights is an understatement. I think Bruce would have been pretty darned impressed with the input that Ron in his day did. But of course, we're here to celebrate the great Bruce McLaren. And I think the man most likely, I mean, you think about Bruce McLaren, people rushing to the grandstands here from my commentary position, because the roar of Formula One is hitting the hillsides of Sonoma in absolute joy to these fans who've all rushed to the fences to hear this number 99, this 1999 car go at its paces. And wow, we're getting some lovely shots. We've also got the MP4 14A04, Tanner Faust at the wheel of that one. Tanner Faust, of course, normally known for his rally exploits and rally cross exploits, X Games, you name it. But Tanner, a pretty handy driver in his own right. But now everybody looking and crooning for a look. And the older car, the M7C01, driven by, at the moment, Rob Garofal, a European Le Mans winner and test driver for McLaren. And that'll be driven by Pato Ward tomorrow. And so they're all going to switch around. Stefan Johansson also here. And, of course, he's now working with Ganassi and his team, still working with Scott Dixon and Pato and many others. So good to have him here. And rather good Formula One and IndyCar driver in his own right. So good to have him here.
Tell you what, that noise never gets old.
It doesn't, does it? And I would say that car that you're looking at now, the Texaco-sponsored high airboxed, Marlboro liveried, and I think that's another thing that was so synonymous with those cars back in the day, was the Marlboro livery, which of course is gone now, and Ferrari effectively took it over. But yeah, those mid-70s days was when I really took to Formula One and understood it a little bit more. And you know, I look at David Malukas now and think, what an opportunity, what a time to come to McLaren as they go into the next era after 60 years. And David right there, he's done all the right work, and he is right in the sort of same mold as a Chris Amon, who came and worked for Bruce and drove with him. And so, you know, I just think that he, Denny Hulme, many others that were of that era would be, I think, would get on pretty well with our current crop. And McLaren treat their drivers like absolute stars, as they should, but also they discipline them in the history of what is being part of McLaren. And I know Zak Brown has a huge respect and interest in both the history and the legacy that he is now part of and effectively is the custodian of. No mean feat, but when you look at his pedigree in both Formula One and in sports car racing, good driver himself and not afraid. He's got a great collection of cars. He's also got a Williams here this weekend, so he'll be driving that later. But here's those high-winged. Igor, what do you think? I mean, you're in design and all the rest of it. When you first look at this car, you think, is that going to work?
Yeah, the raised wing does raise questions, but you know, when you think about the McLaren philosophy, the geometry of those cars, and just the way they tear through tracks, I'd be pretty confident that it'd stick.
Well, what was interesting about that is, if you think about it, when you put the wing that high up, obviously you miss the car. You know, the downforce is all on the rear wing, so on the rear wheels. So it gave tremendous mechanical grip to the rear wheels. And that was the idea. And of course, when you avoid the car completely and forget the aerodynamics of a current Adrian Newey stroke, McLaren car of modern era, I'm using Adrian Newey because obviously the Red Bull, although he did work for McLaren in these eras, was very successful. But when you look at the modern wing, it's all part of the car, and the aerodynamics are all rolled into one, effectively, from the front wing to the back wing. That high wing is basically there just to give downforce to the rears. This is down before ground force effects were inoperative. We're part of Formula One, and now we're in another ground effects era. But that was the idea, and that, I think, may or may not have worked to what they wanted, and there was obviously worries about it breaking off, and it did occasionally, and it got banned eventually. But I think these innovations are all part and parcel of what these designers of the day wanted to experiment, and Formula One and I think Can-Am, which obviously McLaren made a huge inroad into. He was an innovator. He wanted design. He wanted to do things that were different, and I think that was the Kiwi way. It still is. And their drivers are that way, even to this day. They love to tinker. They love to play around with older cars, and I think that's the spirit of Bruce McLaren.
Well, you mentioned something important about innovation. As time goes on, that's kind of what the next step is how do you build on that?
Yeah.
And you were just mentioning the new ground effect era in Formula One. I don't see a lot of porpoising here, so that's a good a good sign.
Yeah, you're absolutely spot on. And that front wing couldn't be more rudimentary, and nor likewise the intake. Very, very simple. And you think, is that cooling the engine in any way? Probably not a great deal. But these were early days, and what you're seeing here is the beginnings of what the modern Formula One car would look like. And M7, 1969, Gordon Kopeck actually designed the car and was driven by Bruce. John Surtees, the only man to basically get two-wheel and four-wheel world championship, another great Brit. Joe Bonnier, Carlos Reutemann from Argentina, another driver of this, and like I said, Rob Garofal at the wheel of this V8 Cosworth M7C.
Was that the car that was debuted in '69?
Yep.
I thought so.
Yep.
Beautiful car.
Yep. Robin Hurd, another great designer from that era, as we take a look again at just looking at the program here to tell us what we got.
Tell you, the sound of that V10 does not get old.
Yeah, I think, days like this is when you yearn for next weekend's Las Vegas to have a couple of those cars out there, because the sound, and I'm sure Lando will concur, that those are the days and those are the sounds that make Formula One so special. But we miss those heady days. Back to the James Hunt car, and of course I idolised James Hunt growing up in Britain, and he really was. He and Barry Sheehan were the epitome of this sort of larrikin kind of guys that were not. They didn't stick to the script. Sponsorship was just coming into motor racing, and they did it all wrong. They drank and smoked and womanized and had a lovely time. But those days are gone. I asked Alexander Rossi if he was going to channel his inner James Hunt yesterday. that did actually make him chuckle. He's not an easy guy to laugh. He's very stoic in his way when in an interview. He doesn't go off the script too much, but he did laugh at that. And I said, well, what about your inner Stefan Johansson? He said, that's more like it. Good fun. And we're celebrating 60 years of McLaren, Bruce McLaren particularly, and what he brought to motorsport. And really the influence he had on American motorsport. It may seem odd to celebrate a Kiwi whose team is still based in the UK today, but not at all. When you consider that the Bruce and Denny show basically took on the States in the late 60s and early 70s. They absolutely trounced the competition in Can-Am while still doing Formula One and being at the top of their game. And before forming McLaren Motor Racing, of course, Bruce McLaren came over with Jack Brabham and joined Cooper before even Jack Brabham became the Brabham Formula One team. So Brabham left and joined or made his own team, and I think that in many ways sparked the real interest in Bruce McLaren forming a Formula One car. But it wasn't until Can-Am that he really got a chance to innovate and be innovative and design his own cars and do his own thing, frankly. Sadly killed in 1970 while testing one of his latest cars. That's the sadness of the loss of Bruce, but the legacy has continued for many a year, and it certainly is well honoured in New Zealand. And I know that this is a special weekend, and we'll have a lot of people tuning in from New Zealand to watch these cars go round. And they too have a huge reverence for what Bruce and Denny Hulme created in their time, and what, frankly, the legacy has followed on. I mean, to see the number of Kiwi drivers just in India alone this year, with Marcus Armstrong, with Scott McLaughlin, with Scott Dixon, just to name three, and there are Jacob Douglas coming up. There's Liam Lawson in Formula One, AlphaTauri, Brendan Hartley, in World Endurance Championship, and so many others. Chris Vanderdrift, I believe, is here driving his father's Can-Am car, but just great racing drivers, and there's more to come. They literally are producing them. We've just had the American Championship won in Formula Regional by Callum Hedge from Auckland, New Zealand, following on in the legacy that all of these guys, this benchmark that this two tiny islands down in the middle of nowhere kind of thing have done. It's an amazing contribution to motor racing, all started effectively by Bruce McLaren.
It's terrific to see these young driver programs really, helping this next generation out.
Yeah, it truly is. And, they're just great guys. I mean, Van Gisbergen, another one who comes straight out of that inkling, even though he's a V8 superstar and is about to get in and show the NASCAR world, just as Bruce did in the Can-Am world, what he's got. Just a fantastic character, and it doesn't matter what he's driving. He just loves it. And David Malukas, like he said, fulfilling a boyhood dream in that James Hunt 1977 car. And likewise, that 99 car, and we'll have more from the other cars. There's more in the garage being prepared as we speak. And there's one of the great originals, that number 4, beautiful.
So one other, we were just talking about the 60 years of McLaren.
Mm-hmm.
We've been, Classic Creations has been developing this, the new generation Shelby Cobra, actually. It's the first time in over 60 years that the Shelby Cobra has been redesigned to celebrate that 60th anniversary as well. It's a shame the car's not on track today, but, definitely next year, look out for that.
Okay, cool. Tanner Faust giving his observations on what he learned out there. As Tanner taking that MP4 14A/04, putting it through its paces. And there's Tony Kanaan just out of the car, and as is his wont, he's chatting away to anybody who'll talk to him about his experience, but a really special moment, I'm sure, for him. And like he said, his boyhood hero, Ayrton Senna, a very special part of his history in motor racing, because I think Senna inspired him to go on to do what he did at Indy, and yeah, there's no one more popular, if you will, with the fans. And I think if Pato is looking for someone to be an idol to, there's no question that Pato could look at Tony Kanaan. So you will be out on track, but it wasn't out on track this
Yeah,
time,
it looks like, just the way the scheduling
We'll come
works.
back when
Obviously,
we-
we've got a lot of these McLaren Formula
at
1
least
cars.
we've learned a little bit about what you're all about, and come back in again when they do go out. Are they going out tomorrow, or is it later today?
Well, we've the plan was to do both days. I think today's going to be the big day, so we'll figure out what time that car goes out, and we'll see you back here.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Igor, for coming in here and telling us a little bit about the classic restorations from Texas.
Absolutely, and thank you so much to all the fans here. I mean, Velocity Invitational.
Yeah, I
just
know, it's
what
great,
an
isn't it?
event! Jeff did such an amazing job. It's just so remarkable to be here, and hopefully everyone enjoyed these fantastic Formula 1 cars.
Lovely. Thanks for coming in. Well, we continue to look high above this Sonoma track and enjoy the festivities as they're underway. And I think I could see Kev just about to see if he can get an interview with one of the drivers after their experience of those wonderful cars.